Hello, and welcome to Aspen Therapy's compliance training for 2022, created and presented by the Aspen Therapy compliance team. Your compliance team consists of Annalisa Torres Aquino, the Senior Director of Clinical Compliance, and me, Mary Lou Malachek, the Director of Clinical Compliance. We've compiled training topics for our teams in collaboration with the operations team over the past year to ensure that our clinics can practice within the current policies and regulations of the various entities that guide our industry. Let's start off with a quote from Kathy Engelbert, who's an experienced and established businesswoman and also the current commissioner of the WNBA. She says, "Our goal is to set the gold standard when it comes to compliance," and we tend to agree. Our agenda for this presentation consists of policy and procedure updates, state survey, minimum data set, and documentation. First up, we'll discuss Aspen's latest compliance-related policies and procedures. We'd like to review and emphasize these policies that were established in 2021. The anti-kickback and gifts policy states that nothing of value or over $15 may be exchanged for referrals. We would like our clinics to be using the loaner equipment agreement form to document that any items that are on loan from a vendor are on loan and not received as a gift. Gifts from residents and their families must be of nominal value or less than $15 and approved by Aspen Therapy Administration. Gifts from vendors may be accepted if of nominal value. The business associate agreement is required for all outside vendors. Check to see if your facility has a business associate agreement in place with the vendor that you have scheduled. You can use the business associate agreement form, which is signed by the vendor and the Aspen Therapy representative if your facility does not have one already on file. Those forms are available on the Aspen Therapy website. Aspen's open door policy is an important one for all employees to be aware of. It states that concerns may be shared with Aspen senior management or corporate human resources, and employees will not be subject to retaliation or reprisals for reporting suspected violations or for taking part in any investigation of an allegation. We also have a system in place with the Compliance Alert tab on Aspen's website, which offers a way to anonymously report a concern without fear of retaliation. Moving on to our operational policy updates. These two policies were recently updated and can be viewed on the Aspen Therapy website's employee portal following the navigational pathways provided here. Incident reporting is a topic that we would like to keep in the forefront of everyone's mind to ensure that proper procedures are followed should an incident arise. This policy was also recently updated in June of this year. Here we have the navigational pathway to find the policy and form on Aspen's website. You can also find a copy of the incident reporting form under the original Forms tab of the employee portal. This policy states that staff members are required to submit incident reports for therapy-related as well as non-therapy-related incidents. A therapy-related incident is one that takes place in a therapy area or during a treatment. A non-therapy-related incident is an incident that takes place in the facility that is witnessed by a therapy staff member who was not directly involved. Reporting should be completed as soon as possible following the occurrence of an incident when the details are fresh in your mind. Incident reports must be submitted prior to leaving the building on the day of the occurrence. Staff members submit incident reports to the FRC, who brings them to the attention of the facility administrator and designee, and the regional director. Once the regional director receives the incident report form, it will be forwarded to the Director of Clinical Operations, the Senior Director of Clinical Compliance, and the appropriate corporate team members. Some incidents are time sensitive and require additional reporting to the state by the facility. These incidents are called SRIs, or self-reported incidents. Examples of self-reported incidents are related to abuse, neglect, exploitation, or misappropriation of property. All incident reports must be signed by the facility administrator or designee. Regarding student supervision and placement, these policies are updated annually. You can find the current student services policy under the Policy and Procedure tab of the Employee Portal on the Aspen Therapy website. There's additional student forms and information located under the new Employee Student Orientation tab following this navigational pathway. There's a set of 3 forms to be completed on day 1 of a student's clinical rotation. These forms are to be signed by the student and the clinical supervisor. They are the 2022 or most current Aspen Student Guidelines, the HIPAA Confidentiality Agreement, and the Resident Abuse Policy Acknowledgement Form. These forms are submitted to the FRC, who then passes them along to the Regional Director, the Senior Director of Clinical Compliance, and the corporate office. Moving on to our next agenda topic, the state survey. You may already know that one component of the state survey is life safety. Our customers take life safety very seriously, so Aspen therapy teams must as well. Keep in mind that just because you haven't been cited during a previous survey doesn't mean that you won't get cited in the future. The compliance team recently participated in training presented by a life safety expert regarding preparation for the state survey. We have listed here some key takeaways. Pictured are some of the leading deficiencies found in the state of Ohio. Ohio was ranked number 14 in leading the states with life safety code deficiencies. These statistics were compiled pre-COVID and included 945 facilities state surveys. There was an average number of 5.5 deficiencies per facility. So we want everyone to keep in mind that the state surveyors are out there looking for these deficiencies, and we do not want to contribute to any of the deficiencies in our facilities. Some other important reminders we have listed here regard some other topics that we learned about during this training. Resident room doors should never lock. We learned a lot about different types of doors. There are specific areas that require self-closing or automatic closing doors within a facility. And those areas include the boiler and fuel-fired heater rooms, laundry rooms, repair, maintenance, and soiled linen rooms, trash collection, and combustible storage spaces. We also learned a lot about hand sanitizer. Aerosol-based sanitizers cannot exceed 95% alcohol, and the maximum capacity is an 18-ounce container. For non-aerosol sanitizers, the maximum capacity for an individual container is 0.32 gallons, which is about 40 ounces. If dispensers are placed out for use, they must be spaced at least 48 inches apart, and no more than 5 gallons of liquid hand sanitizer can be stored in a smoke compartment or storage area. The last column here provides some important reminders about other combustible items. You most likely already know that portable space heaters are prohibited in any skilled nursing facility. This includes offices, common areas, and resident rooms. Regarding oxygen cylinders, they need to be stored and transported in non-combustible racks or carts. They may not be carried by hand. So the green oxygen cylinder tanks cannot be carried by hand. Sometimes we see people kind of tuck them under their arm and walk around with them, but they are only to be transported in approved non-combustible racks or carts. And when stored within the facility, they need to be stored in a locked 30-minute fire-rated non-combustible storage room. They also cannot be stored in the therapy room. The only portable O2 tanks we should ever see in the therapy room should be accompanied by a patient using that tank. We cannot store tanks in the therapy gym in case we might need one later. The next topic for state survey preparation is infection control. We have various safety policies located in the employee portal under the Policy and Procedure tab for your review. Aspen's COVID-19 infection control information is also located in the employee portal under the COVID-19 information tab. We would like everyone to be aware of and strictly follow facility guidelines and policies for infection control. And we recommend that every therapist document in the subjective portion of their treatment encounter notes that all facility infection control policies have been followed. The state surveyors may now be reviewing how facilities are handling the concept of trauma-informed care, which encourages healthcare providers to shift their focus from what is wrong with you to what happened to you. Trauma-informed care is a new potential area of scrutiny included in the FTAG 699. The facility is to provide culturally competent approaches that account for a resident's experiences and preferences to meet the needs of trauma survivors. The facility is to identify triggers that may re-traumatize the individual. Then care planning is required to address trauma and provide resources as necessary to minimize triggers and provide trigger-specific interventions. Trauma survivors may include military veterans, first responders, those with a history of imprisonment, those with a history of homelessness, or abuse survivors. We have listed some helpful sites where you can find additional information and resources about this concept. We have the Crisis Prevention Institute and the Trauma Informed Care Resource Center hyperlinked here. We always want to be cognizant of residents' rights, and today we will discuss as they pertain to social media posts. Aspen's social media policy can be found in the employee portal following this navigational pathway. It states that no staff members should be sharing resident-related content to any social media platforms. This would be a violation of resident rights and can result in a complaint survey. All photo and video submissions sent to compliance or operations must contain an Aspen Therapy signed photo release form for each person in the photograph. The photo release forms are located in the employee portal under HR forms that we have also hyperlinked here. There are two forms, one for the employee and one for the patient. For our next topic, we want to highlight some sections of the MDS, or minimum data set. And first up, we have section K. Here we will discuss what SLPs need to collect and enter for Section K. Section K focuses on assessing residents' swallowing and nutritional status. The components of Section K are intended to assess conditions that could affect a resident's ability to maintain adequate nutrition and hydration. Aspen uses the custom MDS item set form to enter data to be shared for the completion of the MDS. This information is entered into Net Health, which is then shared with the MDS department, and the MDS department uses the information to submit the electronic MDS. When screening or evaluating a skilled resident for swallowing, the following information should be gathered and entered into Net Health via the custom MDS item set form. Pictured here, we have screenshots of the sections of the MDS from Section K for which our therapy teams are gathering data. So first we have K0100, which asks whether these 4 conditions apply or whether none of the above apply. We are also responsible for Section K0510. This screenshot from the MDS might help better understand what is being requested here. This section is asking if these conditions for nutritional approaches were applicable within the last 7 days while the person was not a resident of the facility. If the admission was more than 7 days previous, you may select the blank or skip pattern option in the MDS item set form. You would count back 7 days from the date you did the screening or evaluation when filling out this form. As you can see, these nutritional approaches include oral diets, any kind of mechanically altered diet, a therapeutic diet, and non-oral diets. Here's a screenshot of the Net Health custom MDS item set form for Section K. What we need to realize is that this form is 2 pages. So this top set of questions represents page 1, and these bottom 2 questions are on page 2. This form can be a little tricky, especially with the responses that are available in the custom MDS item set form. So here's some additional information that might be helpful. The responses available are not checked or no in parentheses. You would select this if the condition does not apply. Checked with yes in parentheses would be selected if the condition does apply. Not assessed and no information is the selection if you're unable to obtain information or assess whether this condition applies. And then the last option states blank in parentheses skip pattern. This option is only available for the set of questions pertaining to when not a resident. So you would select this option if more than 7 days have passed since admission to the facility in order to leave the not a resident section blank. And again, don't forget that this has 2 pages to the form. There are 2 questions on page 2 that are very easily overlooked. Next, we want to emphasize a few points about MDS section GG. Some facts about GG are that there are 7 MDS questions reflecting patient self-care status and 17 questions reflecting patient mobility status. MDS collects the information from therapy as well as nursing to determine the patient's usual performance. We should score admission status to reflect the baseline prior to any benefit from treatment. If progress is expected in the plan of care, then the projected discharge performance should be higher than the admission performance. And lastly, these scores should reflect functional outcomes and show that progress was achieved. Medicare has set up quality reporting program measures based on Section GG in order to compare facility performance to other skilled nursings and other healthcare settings. Outcome performance is publicly posted on the Care Compare website and is available for all to see. There's a 2% penalty if Section GG is not completed with 80% or greater accuracy. In the future, facilities may have payment incentives based on GG performance. GG scores also affect PDPM case mix group, which drives reimbursement of the facilities. And incorrect coding does not showcase the patient progress that we may have seen, so we must be diligent in scoring accuracy on Section GG. Much of our training often frequently focuses on Section GG because this is a very important score. The question here states, how do quality reporting program measures work? There are 4 quality reporting measurements that exist. There's the change in self-care score, the change in mobility score. These 2 scores compare the GG status on admission to the GG status upon DC, and they reflect how much progress was made. Then there's the discharge self-care score and the discharge mobility score. These 2 measures look at the level of independence at discharge. With these, we're able to calculate the percentage of patients who meet or exceed Medicare's discharge expectations. Together, these scores are a reflection of the effectiveness of therapy services, which is another reason why we need to be diligent in our scoring accuracy. For our last MDS-related topic, we'd like to discuss selection of ICD-10 codes. Here are some points for evaluating therapists and FRCs to consider. For skilled plans of care, the primary medical diagnosis chosen by MDS must match the primary medical diagnosis on the evaluation. If more than one medical diagnosis is listed on the evaluation, the primary medical diagnosis should be listed first in that top line. It is the FRC's responsibility to ensure that skilled evaluations include the primary medical diagnosis from MDS. Any adjustments should be made before the end of the month closeout in order to be reflected accurately on billing. If you notice a return to provider code in use, which is not reimbursable, communicate this with your FRC or MDS in order to determine if another option is available. For all plans of care, any ICD-10 codes included in the evaluation should appear on the list of the patient's medical diagnosis codes in the electronic medical record, or point-click care. For long-term residents, we need to carefully select a primary medical diagnosis code from the list in the electronic medical record that most accurately reflects the etiology of the patient's current condition. If a patient has a diagnosis code that is not included in the electronic medical record by mistake, we need to communicate this with the FRC or MDS to determine if this code should or could be listed. We have resources on the Aspen website, including the ICD-10 refresher for additional information. Our final topic today is documentation. Our documentation audits sometimes reveal trends that help us determine further training needs. The next few slides touch on areas of documentation that we'd like to refresh your memories about. First up is physician's orders. These must be noted in the medical record per facility policy to protect the resident, facility, and your license. Orders are required for all therapy evaluations, clarification of treatment interventions, recertification of service, discharge of service, and any adaptive equipment or assistive devices that were recommended. We also would like to discuss billing codes. All treatment billing codes must have documentation to support their use, including on the day of evaluation, day of recert, day of discharge, or within the treatment encounter notes and progress notes. Billing any code and stating in your documentation, see progress note with no other documentation included does not justify use of that code. Treatment to support the code billed must also be documented. Billing codes need to match the service provided, and we also need to clearly define tasks to avoid any appearance of double billing within the codes. For example, if you're documenting balance retraining under both the therapeutic activities code and the neuro re-education code, you would want to indicate how one may have focused on balance for mobility and the other focused on facilitating writing reactions. For treatment encounter notes, we want to make sure that we are describing the skill of the services that you, the therapist, have provided. You want to explain what you are doing to help this person that could not have been done by a non-therapist. Your skilled notes should include patient or caregiver education and the response to that training. So you would want to document that return demonstration with fair understanding was shown, or that the caregiver verbalized good awareness of the techniques that were trained. Aspen's employee portal includes tip sheets for skilled terminology and phrases for a variety of interventions that can be incorporated into your documentation. Treatment encounter notes must also support the plan of care's frequency and duration, and documented services must be provided per plan of care. We also want to include the following in our notes. Document any gains made, even if they're small. Document any setbacks, such as a change in medical status or perhaps the onset of a UTI. Document the request or modification of goals into smaller steps for achievement. And again, make sure to ensure that all treatment provided is within the plan of care. Our third column here discusses discharge preparation training. Providers have become increasingly liable for discharging patients too soon and without proper training. For planned discharges, our final sessions need to focus on essential safety education to prepare the individual for the discharge environment. Note the patient's or caregiver's response to your specific training in the treatment encounter note and the discharge summary. Protect yourself by carefully and thoroughly documenting all training provided in the treatment encounter note, the discharge summary, and on the discharge recommendation form that is completed by the therapist and signed by the nursing department or whatever caregiver you trained. Document who was educated on your discharge recommendations in the treatment encounter note as well as the discharge summary. Moving on to discuss documentation for treatments that aren't typical individual treatment sessions. So for group, concurrent, co-visits, and co-treatments. Group therapy for PDPM Part A, Managed Care A, MyCare A, and Medicaid can only account for up to 25% of the total therapy minutes per discipline. A group for PT and OT can be 2 to 6 participants, and for speech can be up to 4 participants. These participants must be performing similar activity at the same time in the same location. Group CPT codes and justification for patient inclusion in the group must be on the evaluation. Here we have the codes used by PT and OT and the group code used by speech. Medicare does not at this time recognize dysphagia as a safe group treatment option. If multiple disciplines are involved in a group, participants must be split for billing purposes. So if a PT and OT group consists of 4 patients, then PT could bill for 2 and OT could bill for 2. Part B treatment is really intended to be conducted on an individual basis. So the group billing code must be used whenever a Part B patient is seen simultaneously with another person. Treatment encounter notes documentation must include a description of the group, skilled interventions provided, modifications made to enable patient success, and a reason why that person's needs were best met in the group setting. On to concurrent therapy, which is defined as treating 2 patients who are not performing the same or similar tasks at the same time in the same location. So they're being treated simultaneously in the same location, but they are not performing the same or similar tasks. We don't have special codes for use in concurrent therapy. We can use the regular CPT billing codes. And this also counts as part of 25% of the total therapy time. Concurrent therapy is not recognized for Part B patients and also is not supported by many non-PDPM managed care providers. Here are some additional definitions for clarification of terms that can easily be confused. Co-treatment refers to 2 therapists from different disciplines working together to maximize progress during a treatment session. It is expected to be more infrequent. For Part A, both therapists can bill the entire session. For Part B, the treatment time is split or only one therapist bills for the entire session. Documentation must include a reason for co-treatment by each discipline, the goals addressed, and the benefit for the patient. A co-visit is defined as 2 therapists from the same discipline working with a person at the same time. This can be an evaluator and an assistant, or 2 assistants. The total treatment time may be split by the 2 therapists, or one therapist may bill for the total session. Telehealth evaluations are considered co-visit. Any treatment provided by the assistant on the day of the evaluation must be done and documented as a separate session. Here we have listed the contact information for the compliance team. Please feel free to contact us with any questions you might have about the training topics today or anything else that may come up. We are here to support our clinical teams. We hope you enjoyed seeing all the team pictures on these slides today. Be sure your team is represented next time by sending your pictures our way to share on our social media platforms and within future informational and training presentations. But please don't forget your photo release forms. A big thank you to you for your time and attention today and for all that you do in the clinics each day to enrich the lives of those you treat. We sincerely appreciate and support you. Thank you.